It was a gray dawn off the southern coast of Spain, 1943. The waves rolled lazily under a sky the color of smoke, and the wind carried the faint scent of salt and oil. A Spanish fisherman named Ramon Castillo was the first to see him, a body floating face down, tangled in seaweed, one arm gently rising and falling with the tide. When they pulled the corpse aboard, it looked like an ordinary soldier. He was young, no more than 30, clean-shaven, his uniform pressed and foreign. Inside his jacket, the fisherman found a leather briefcase chained to his wrist, the kind that whispered importance. By noon, the local authorities had reported the discovery to German intelligence officers stationed in Huelva. Within hours, word had reached Berlin. A British officer's body has been found. He carried secret documents. The Germans were electrified. The documents detailed British plans to invade Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily, as many had predicted. It was a breakthrough, or so they thought. 2 days later, deep within a bunker in London, a small group of British officers gathered around a flickering map table. At the center stood Lieutenant Commander Ewan Montagu, his face unreadable, a cigarette burning slowly between his fingers. "They've found him," said a voice from the corner. "Good," Montagu murmured, "then it's begun." The man they dropped into the sea wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even alive when they released him. His name, or rather, the name they'd given him, was Major William Martin, Royal Marines. His mission, to deceive the entire German High Command. His weapon, a briefcase full of lies. What began as a desperate gamble was now unfolding perfectly. British intelligence called it Operation Mincemeat, a deception so elaborate that it could change the course of World War II. But what no one knew, not even the masterminds themselves, was that something had gone wrong. Somewhere between London and Berlin, a shadow had started following the operation. A double agent, someone who knew that Major Martin was a man who never existed. And before the game was over, people on both sides would die to protect or expose the truth. In the dim basement of MI5 headquarters, the air smelled of damp paper and tobacco. Lieutenant Commander Ewan Montagu stood by the long oak table, eyes fixed on the coded telegram freshly delivered from Spain. The Germans had taken the bait, or at least, that's what the message suggested. They had opened Major Martin's briefcase. They had read the secret invasion orders. And now, reports from intercepted radio transmissions showed that Hitler himself was diverting troops from Sicily to Greece. It worked, or so everyone believed. But Montagu wasn't celebrating. He couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him, a whisper that something was too perfect, too easy. 3 nights later, under the cover of blackout curtains, a man known only as Agent Havelock met his German contact in a safe house on the outskirts of Lisbon. The contact's name was Kurt Rademacher, a smooth-speaking Abwehr officer with eyes like polished glass. "The British think we're fools," Rademacher said with a thin smile. "They've handed us their invasion plans themselves." Havelock nodded, sliding a sealed envelope across the table. "And yet," he whispered, "not everything is as it seems." Inside that envelope was a single piece of evidence, a photograph of Montagu and his team taken 2 weeks before Major Martin's discovery. A photograph that should never have existed. Someone inside British intelligence had betrayed them. Back in London, chaos rippled quietly through the intelligence corridors. Files were rechecked, orders retyped, meetings held behind locked doors. Only a handful of people even knew the truth about Operation Mincemeat, and one of them was leaking. Montagu turned to his colleague, Charles Comendelli, pale with exhaustion. "If this photo reaches Berlin, the entire deception collapses," Montagu said. "Then we make sure it doesn't," Comendelli replied. "Even if it means silencing our own." They had built an illusion so convincing it had fooled Hitler himself, But illusions are fragile. One shadow, one word, one photograph could destroy it all. And somewhere between London and Berlin, Agent Havelock was already one step ahead. He didn't work for the Germans. He didn't work for the British. He worked only for himself, and soon he would trade both sides for something far greater than victory. A cold mist blanketed Lisbon's harbor. Ships rocked silently against the piers, their lanterns glowing faintly like ghostly eyes. Inside a crumbling warehouse near the docks, Agent Havelock waited, the stolen photograph in his hand, a ticket to fortune and freedom in the other. He could already imagine the headlines once the truth came out. British spy betrays Operation Mincemeat. The war would shift overnight. Berlin would strike Sicily, destroy the Allied landing before it began, and history itself would bend in a different direction. But Havelock never saw the figure step out from the shadows behind him. "You took something that doesn't belong to you," a voice said. "And you've been a ghost in our files for far too long." Ewan Montagu emerged from the darkness, his revolver steady, eyes cold. Behind him, 2 agents sealed the exits. Havelock laughed softly. "You're too late, Commander. The Germans already know. I sent the proof this morning." Montagu's expression didn't change. "No, you didn't. The courier you trusted works for us." The color drained from Havelock's face. His fingers twitched toward his pocket, but Montagu was faster. The echo of the shot was swallowed by the sea wind. The photograph fluttered from Havelock's lifeless hand, landing face down in a puddle of seawater, his reflection staring back at him for a brief, final moment before the ripples erased it completely. 2 weeks later, the world changed. On July 10, 1943, Allied forces stormed the beaches of Sicily, catching the Germans completely off guard. The false papers carried by Major William Martin had worked. Operation Mincemeat had saved tens of thousands of lives and turned the tide of the war. In London, Montagu stood before a simple wooden box in a military cemetery, unmarked but for a single inscription. Major William Martin, Royal Marines. He did his duty. But Montagu knew the truth. Inside that coffin was a man whose real name no one would ever know, a drifter, a nobody, a corpse transformed into a legend. And somewhere, deep down, he wondered, was their greatest deception really victory or blasphemy? Because in the end, the man who never existed had won the war.